Up more than 1,500% in less than a year. These are some of the hottest stocks in the market right now. MarketBeat's Jeffrey Neal-Johnson joins us with a look at 5 of the hottest memory stocks out there. And it might sound boring, memory, but honestly, all of the stocks that we are talking about on this list today have had some of the biggest jumps in price action that we've seen in the market in just the last few months. The last one on our list today, we're going to build our way down to the biggest gains that we've seen in the market. And these numbers are wild, Jeffrey. I'm really excited to get into it. I want to start out by talking about why these names are continuing to grow as we're seeing some rotations just in the last week out of some areas of tech. Why is this area still staying really, really strong?
It's a better week to be making bricks than it is to be building houses. I think it comes down to what I've talked to you about many times is it's the picks and shovels plays that are growing strong. If you look, the companies that are suffering are the software companies and the theoretical companies that have incredibly high valuations, but they don't really have much to show for what they're offering. If you look at the sectors this past week, you've seen that anything that you can physically touch, chips, copper, infrastructure, AI leases, like data AI leases in some places, anything that you can put your physical hands on, that's what's getting rotated into. So if it's a proven play and it's something that is needed, then they're rotating into.
I think one other thing we need to talk about with this is we want to talk about why and when these memory stocks started to get so much excitement and investment and growth in their stock price. When did that switch happen? Because many of these companies aren't new. They've been around for a long time, but the switch really kind of started happening in the last few months. And also wanting to talk about some of the impact they've had on other companies in the market too.
Yeah, so the switch happened, over say like the past 3 or 4 months, and it's been the same thing that I've always talked about. It's going from speculative to show me. So as we go from AI training to AI inference, inference uses much more processing power than training uses. So, if you have a data center to train an AI that has 1,000 processors in it, when you put that AI out in the wild and you have 1 million users using it at one time, you're going to need 3 or 4,000 processors to do that. So once you move from the training to the inference, from the show me to we can do this kind of a phase, you're getting a lot more usage from these enterprises that are using these LLMs all day long, every day. And that's generating a lot more inference level requests because that you don't do inference and training on the same systems. It's done on separate systems. So now you have to have 1,000 chips to train it. You have to have 3,000 chips to run it. And everybody wants AI. Nobody wants anything else. But at the same time, you've got the Windows 10 refresh cycle coming up, and you've got enterprise companies that have to buy new systems. And so every single chip that's out there is just getting gobbled up. And you can see that all the way down to most recently, like Intel and some of the other chip makers coming out, and they're releasing weak guidance. And the guidance isn't saying we don't have the orders. The guidance is saying that we don't have the chips. And there's currently, we've reached this like wall of physics where with the manufacturing and with the power supply that we have, we really can't make more than we're making. So we've reached this kind of like wall where the supply is gone, but it's still just like everybody wants it so bad. And so now you're starting to see shortages across the board. And it's giving the makers of these chips unprecedented, like 20-year pricing power. Like they haven't had this kind of pricing power in 20 years.
So interesting. That is why we are calling this the memory shortage, the memory crisis. There's been all kinds of headlines about how critical memory storage is to the AI infrastructure build out. And that is why these 5 names are so popular. Let's start out with the first name on your list. This is, of the 5 names, the most speculative of the 5.
Right. So the first one on our list is Pure Storage. It's PSTG. The pure in Pure Storage means that they believe that AI, whether it's inference or training, should be run off of high speed hard disk drives, solid state hard disk drives. They're very expensive hard disk drives and they require chips, versus like, for instance, data lake storage, which is done with spinning disks. It's not as chip intensive. It's not as fast, obviously, but you only really need the high speed chips in certain situations. So in training, in the new upcoming sovereign AI trend that's happening, in situations like Google and in like LLM situations like OpenAI, you really don't need that speed all the time, right? And so they're being punished currently because as the market moves away from high stock valuations, you're looking at a company that makes hardware and has a PE ratio of like 184, which is just ridiculous. So they're getting punished because of that. They are the most expensive and fastest play. And sometimes you just don't need that much power.
I think the other thing that's interesting about this one, compared to the other names that we have coming on the list, this is really the only one that doesn't really have that impressive 1 year growth story. Why is that? And I know you did just explain a lot about it, but why is this one not seeing the same kind of growth and explosive growth that the other names on the list have seen?
I think it's a kind of like a wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. This company is producing like super fast, super high speed storage arrays that interact directly with the AI. And that's not really what we're doing with AI right now. You know, some people are, and that's why, for instance, they just slowed down their descent with like a $3.6 billion contract with Meta. But Meta needs that machine to do like high speed training and high speed inference and local AI and that kind of stuff. They're not gonna put that out to the standard public. The standard public doesn't need a Ferrari. They need a dump truck. You know, you're processing questions all day long, every day about where's the closest barber shop? How do I, these are the things you're asking AIs these days. And those things aren't high speed things. They're just things that need to be processed. So companies like Google and companies like Anthropic, they're not going to buy these pure storage data walls. They're going to instead buy 40 petabyte data lakes from Western Digital or Seagate or one of Pure Storage's competitors. As the price of chips come down, they may, you may see that the speed at all cost narrative will be valid in some places, but really it's too much. It's overdone for what we're doing with AI right now.
Yeah, another thing to look at with this one, with Pure Storage, and there is still some upside even at the consensus on this one. And some of those higher estimates are moving this stock even higher down the road. So I think this is an interesting first one to look at. And again, a lot of the numbers on this one are very different than the other competitors that we are about to talk about.
Yeah, it's like Citibank, and I think it was Susquehanna just raised their price targets to like 105, but they cited specifically this new Meta contract that's come in to kind of plug the hole of their descent. And I think that as more and more sovereign AI comes online and the need for more and more high performance AI comes online, you'll see this stock start moving. But for right now, Wall Street's just not convinced. It's just not convincing enough. It's just not time. And this particular technology needs a little bit of time for AI to grow up enough that it needs that kind of power.
All right, let's move on to the second stock on the list. And this is getting closer to that explosive growth that we've seen this year in so many of these names.
Yeah, so the second stock's Western Digital. It's WDC. Everybody knows Western Digital, and they recently just spun off our number one player. They did that because they wanted to focus specifically on spinning hard drives, platter-based hard drives. They're falling behind their number one competitor, which is Seagate. And so they got rid of certain divisions within their company that allowed them to laser focus on just platter-based hard drives. And once they did that, they actually started working on a new technology called energy-assisted perpendicular magnetic recording. And this new EPMR technology is what's going to allow them to break a barrier that they've not been able to break, which is like the 30 terabyte barrier or something like that. Once you break that barrier and you start moving towards the 100 terabyte, they're going to be able to start being more competitive, right, with their more direct competitors. The thing about it is that with these spinning platters, you have to build like these giant data lakes, and you start thinking about like a hundred terabytes. That's an insane amount of data, but it's really just a drop in the bucket when you start thinking about like maybe a 40 petabyte data lake or a 400 petabyte data lake. You know, and when you start talking about AIs that can look at video and AIs that can listen to audio, having a 40 petabyte data lake really isn't outside of the realm of that possibilities. And with this new EPMR technology, Western Digital is starting to develop the technology that will get them like neck and neck with their number one competitor.
Yeah, the storage numbers that you're speaking of make a lot of sense when you look at AI and how much this whole field is growing. And that's the whole conversation about why these stocks have seen so much growth. And this one, by the way, up 375% year over year. So huge jumps for these stocks. But again, it's all back to that AI race. We are not talking about AI specific stocks today. We're talking about these memory stocks. But if you want to look at the list of the top 10 AI stocks to invest in 2026, it's a really great report by MarketBeat's Thomas Hughes. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get that full report for free because you are watching our YouTube channel. You can get that premium report free right now on marketbeat.com. I've got that link in the comments or in the description too if you want to check that out after this video. All right, Jeffrey, let's get back to Western Digital. Again, that growth story, 375% growth roughly in the last year. How much more upside could a stock like this even have? It's grown so much. I think investors looking at it today might be going, this is too hot to get into right now.
Nah, they're sold out. Like they're sold out for the rest of the year. And we're just now getting into the inference race. So, we've got these LLMs and all last year they've been trained and people have been playing with them to see what they can do. But these companies now know that these things are super powerful and that you can feed them all kinds of information. But the problem is that these high-speed AI systems don't need access to that data all the time. So when it doesn't need that data, it has to be put somewhere in cold storage, and that cold storage is being produced by Western Digital. And it really comes down to a simple thing of now that they're laser focused, if they can get this EPMR technology really up and running and they start scaling up to 50, 80, 100 terabyte hard drives or even bigger, I mean, the story for them really is only limited to how fast they can roll out bigger and bigger drives. And so as newer technologies roll out, it just keeps feeding the machine and feeding the machine. I think Western Digital has a long way to go. I think all these companies on this list have a long way to go.
Well, let's get on to the next one. What's the third company on your list?
Okay, so the third company on our list is Western Digital's direct competitor, and that's Seagate Technologies. Their symbol's STX. The only reason that they're Western Gate's direct competitor is because before Western Digital spun off and started doing like high capacity drive technology, they had already perfected their hammer technology, which is heat assisted magnetic recording. They basically use a laser like in a CD burner, like what you'd find on a CD burner, and they heat up the platter on the hard drive before they change the magnetism of it. So it allows them to pack the magnetic material tighter on the hard drive, which then allows them to put more data on the hard drive. The reason that I think they're above Western Digital in the play is because they're already producing like ultra massive size hard drives. So their 30 plus terabyte hard drives are already on the market. They've got, I think, like 50 plus terabyte line coming out soon. I think by the end of the year or before the end of 2026, they're looking at like 100 terabyte. And so they're very quickly leaving Western Digital in the dust. So if Western Digital can catch up to that, then they can get a slice of that pie. But it's the same story for Seagate as it is for Western Digital. You got to put the data somewhere when you're not using it. And the only place you can put it is a data lake. The cheapest data lake that you can make is a spinning platter data lake. And because their spinning platter drives are larger in capacity and better with energy, they're obviously the next one on the list. And they're still the number one spinning drive competitor out there.
Yeah, I think the growth story here too is absolutely mind blowing. We just talked about Western Digital having this crazy growth story. Seagate's even more, up over 500% in the last year. And the crazy thing about this one is it's still technically trading underneath its consensus price target. So analysts are obviously leading the stock much, much higher. When I look at all of these memory stocks, I just think about you were doing pretty well as an investor if you got into these stocks a year or two ago. For those who are ahead of the curve, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you happen to be an investor in one of these before any time ahead of the last year, I'd love to hear how you've been doing with these and kind of why you invested early on these stocks. Because I'm curious, Jeffrey, didn't anybody know that this was coming? Why have we seen just such a rapid rise in these stocks in such a short amount of time.
The super techie nerds out there that, that really pay attention to this, I think they saw it coming, but unless they're a tech nerd that also invests in stocks, I don't think they were able to act on it, and I don't think a whole lot of people were able to act on it, and it really comes down to the simple fact that, with all of the things from AI to the PC refresh cycle to the upcoming edge. There's going to be an edge super cycle soon where you're not going to want to buy a new PC chip unless it has an inference chip attached to it so that you can run AI locally. All that right there is just draining the chips out of the world. And I talk all the time about the fact that you have these analysts that see a stock and they're so like enthralled by what the market's doing that they just chase the stock price. So you have like Citigroup, going to like 480 on this stock, and it's like, okay, that's great. But the telling one on this is when you start seeing companies like Cantor Fitzgerald. Cantor Fitzgerald has looked at this and said, this is a long-standing problem, and I'm going to take a leap. And I think just like 2 days ago, Cantor Fitzgerald came out with a $650 price target on this stock. If you're making chips, they're gone already. Every single chip maker on this list is maxed out to 2026. And like I said earlier, we're at a physical limit right now. Without more power or more factories, we're making everything we can make, and everything that we can make is already sold. So that means that, you just have like, it's just a price, supply and demand thing, There's no supply and everybody wants it. So the price is just going to go through the roof. It is an amazing time to be with these companies.
They have come up so much, and we're only on stock number 3. You've got 2 others, and we're building our way towards the 2 names that you think have the greatest potential in this space. So we have even more to go on this list yet. Let's get to the next name because this one has had a little bit of different price action, at least in the last week.
Yeah, this one is great. This one is it's actually number 2 on my list for a reason because I think that now is an excellent time to consider looking at this stock. We're talking about Micron. Their symbols MU. They are the only maker of high bandwidth memory, the DRAM that's needed in your computer, the DRAM that's needed on these NVIDIA chips, the high bandwidth memory that's needed in HPC, high powered computing. They're the only American maker of that particular chip, right? And so they've been just chugging along like everybody else. But earlier in the week, Samsung came out and just kind of said, we might also start making DRAM. And when they did, everybody just bailed off of Micron like they're not sold out for the rest of the year. It's that bailout where everybody jumped off because Samsung said that they, might come into the market. One, pushed Samsung's Korean stock to a 52-week high, and it also shed off onto some of these other players that we're talking about, but it also created a nice buying opportunity. There's a nice dip there because there's no reason for this stock to be down. The simple rebuttal to the stock market today is this stock is sold out until the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll talk about price action on MU because I think there's a lot to talk about there. But you just said something that I've burning question for me with all of these stocks, MU included. You said there's more demand, and once the demand comes for next year, it's not going to die out. The stock before you talked about how they can charge whatever they want to right now because there's so much demand out there. But that has to end eventually, right? Eventually, the supply has to catch up with the demand. Do you see that boomeranging back around for these stocks, or how long do you think there will be this gap between the supply and demand that's kind of been the catalyst for all of this price action this last year?
I think honestly that about the time we get our hands around the throat of this problem, quantum's going to be an achievable solution. And then we're going to need memory for quantum. So, I mean, this has been going on forever. It's been a year that I've been looking at these prices and they've just not come down. Everything's kind of still there at a physical limit. We have some chip factories coming online here and there. And when those chip factories come online, it's going to ease some of the production struggle. But it's still one of those things where we need more now than we're able to produce. You can say that the bulk of the technological revolution right now, whether you're talking about air taxis, robots in your home, whether you're talking about cars that drive themselves, all of that is currently being stifled by the fact that you cannot buy chips. to put into the toys that you're making.
Yeah, essentially, all of these technological advancements all require the memory that we are talking about here today. So you make a solid argument. There's a lot of upside still to come. With MU specifically, let's talk about there was a pullback in the last couple of weeks, which is something a lot of investors have been waiting for, any kind of pullback. And this meteoric climb these stocks have seen, MU, even with the pullback, is still up 320% almost for the year. So still up a ton right now. Thoughts on why we had the little bit of a pullback in MU and what you think about the recent price targets from analysts too, because there's a little bit of a mixed bag, but there are certainly lots of price targets moving this even higher.
And you just had that little bit of an upset where Samsung came out. Nobody likes competition, but they're still the only American play. So as soon as the market kind of digested that for a second, they started piling right back onto the stock. It's only down something like 5% over the week. For the news that the stock had to digest, it is rebounding fairly quickly. I don't think that a competitor is going to be coming in anytime soon and scooping up their advantage. And I don't think that any of the analysts think that they're going to either. Barkley raised to 450, I think, and Mizu went to 480 recently, and Rosenblatt went straight for 500. And that's a pretty nice chunk of change on the upside when you're talking about a 390 trading price right now. So I think that everybody's super bullish about where it's going. It's just right now everything is priced for perfection. So it's all about execution. So one tiny, tiny, tiny little slip up, Samsung coming out and going, we might also make memory, can cause that kind of a volatile like reaction in the stock. But then as soon as everybody goes, oh, the world's not ending, they immediately pile right back on.
Yeah, an interesting point for this one. And all of these names are so good and so strong, especially this last name you're about to do on the list, because this is the one that's seen the most incredible explosive growth in the last year. But before we get to the last pick, I do want to add my Bridget's Buy watch list addition. And I think I'm going to choose MU. It's hard. I debated between MU and Seagate. I also think that Seagate still has so much potential. All of them do. I think all of these stocks have a ton of potential to grow. I'm just picking MU because of that slight pullback that it had this week. It makes it a slightly better buying opportunity where it's trading right now, but not much. So really, I feel like I could have added any of these stocks today and they will still continue to grow over time, but we'll see. That's the one I'm going to add to my paper trading watch list on MarketBeat. If you haven't checked it out yet, scan the QR code or click the link to follow along with some of the stocks that we talk about on the channel. I pick one stock per video. We usually talk about multiple stocks, and I'll pick one to add to this watch list. All right, Jeffrey, let's get on to that final pick, the one that has got everyone's attention this year.
So, this one, I talked about its parent company earlier in the show, Western Digital. They're the momentum rocket. They are a pure play flash memory and enterprise SSD provider. They are the key for AI inference. They provide instant data to the enterprises that are doing the inference, like Google and Anthropic currently. They're currently trading at about 606 right now, and they've had an explosive year. They're up 72% the past month, 189% over the past like 3 months. They just provided a killer earnings report. And of course, the stock that I'm talking about is SanDisk.
Yeah, I think that it's not even been out for a whole year yet. And the most impressive number to look at is what that year over year growth is likely going to be when that comes out. I think that anniversary is coming up yet this month, right?
Yeah, it is coming up this month. February 24th will be their 1 year anniversary. If you look, you can look at Western Digital. They're up like 311% since they split off, and SanDisk is up 1,585 to 1,600%, depending on the day. On any given day, they go up 4, 5, 6, 8%. There's doesn't seem to be a place where this stock is going to struggle. They have analysts that are saying $1,000. UBS just came out and said $1,000 on this stock. And then, of course, you've got Cantor and Barclays at 800 and 750 respectfully.
We talk a lot about other chip stocks in a different area of AI infrastructure that have a lot of potential. In this video, we talked about 6 stocks that have potential and even more upside than NVIDIA. Make sure to check out this video too.